Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I just finished building my second Pauper deck. If you don't know what Pauper is a 60 card format where anything over the course of Magic's history is legal, except at some point it will have had to have been printed at common. 60 card format, you can have up to 4 copies of any card, except for basic lands, obviously. It's a really interesting format because you would think that commons are like not that good, but Pauper is actually like a really fast-paced, powerful format, very much like Legacy is, but it's affordable. It's actually really easy to get into. And if you're not playing Pauper, I recommend you try it out. So, like I said, I have my 2 Pauper decks here today. Hopefully, Steven will do a great job behind the camera, pointing out all the cards I'm going to talk to you about. Just real quick, I'm going to lead you through my 2 Pauper decks, and I hope it encourages you and maybe some of the guys in your playgroup to pick up some Pauper decks and give this awesome format a try. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my first Pauper deck. So that's what we have up here. The point of this deck is it's Jund, all right? So it's red, green, black. The point of the deck is fill up the graveyard so we can get some big creatures out quicker with the delve mechanic. So if you look up here, these 3 creatures up here, the Angler, the Soultide Scavenger, and the Hooting Mandrill, they all have delve. So they cost a colorless less to cast for each card you exile from your graveyard when you cast them. So the idea is we're going to get these, this 5/5, this 3/3 flyer, or this 4/4 trampler. We're going to get those out pretty dang quick by filling up our graveyard. So the other 2 creatures in the deck are great ways to help fill up the graveyard. So we have the Viscera Dragger, which we can cycle away to help keep going through our hand, cycling through our hand, but it also puts itself in the graveyard. But if we need it later for more damage, it also has Unearth, which is nice on a 3/3 body, getting it back for 2 mana, not bad. And then the Stinkwood Imp is also super duper important because we basically just want it in the graveyard so we can do the Dredge 5. So that way, whenever we would go to draw a card, we can just mill ourselves for 5. Really powerful effect, helps fill up the graveyard really, really fast. But we can't just rely on the creatures to fill up the graveyard. So here are some of the other cards that we use to fill up the graveyard. So up here we have some red cards. We have 2 copies of Cathartic Reunion and 4 copies of Faithless Looting. So Reunion's not as good as Faithless Looting. So we discard a card when we cast it and we can draw 3 cards. And then Faithless Looting for 1 mana, we draw 2 cards, then discard 2, and it has flashback. So that is pretty helpful. And then over here, we have a couple more cards that are actually probably better than those 2 cards. We have Grizzly Salvage, which we reveal the top 5 cards, and we can put either a creature or a land card from them into our hand and the rest into our graveyard, which is also nice because it's a May ability, so you don't have to. If you don't need any of those, just let them all go to your graveyard. Those are all going to be fuel for your delve creatures. But if you need something, if you need to hit your land drop, helps you do that. If you need a creature, helps you get that. And then Commune with the Gods does the same thing, except it's creature or enchantment, which we don't have any enchantments in the decks, but if you need to help find creatures and fill up your graveyard, great way to do it. And then for removal in the deck, we have Chainer's Edict and Ghastly Demise, which neither are great, but removal is kind of finicky in this format. The Chainer's Edict, specifically for flashback for 7 mana, not very efficient, but it being able to just go to your graveyard if you need to get one of your creatures out, awesome. But if you need the removal, you can get there. And then for mana, we have a playset of Evolving Wilds, a handful of swamps, a couple forests, and a mountain. And then we have 3 of each of Jungle Hollow, Bloodfell Caves, and Rugged Highland. That helps make sure we really fix our mana, but it's also, this deck is not very fast, so the fact that all of those lands gain us 1 life when they enter the battlefield helps us stay alive a little bit longer, especially against aggro decks. So this is a really strong, really fun deck, and it has a decent win rate. And this deck would set you back only roughly, I don't know the exact number, it probably could do a little cheaper, depending on which copies you're willing to buy or whatever. But this deck would set you back about $32, so very cheap. So now we're going to go ahead and move into this one. This is a deck that I just finished, mostly a Rat Colony deck. So a Rat Colony is for 1 and a black. It's a rat that says it gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control, and you can have any number of rat colonies in your deck. So I think there's 18 rat colonies in this deck. So that's a lot. And this deck is more expensive. The main reason for that is because people like building rat colony decks for commander, so they need 20 something for commander. So that's the main thing that's going to set you back in this deck. But I used to have a rat colony commander deck, so when I took that deck apart, it helped me build this. So I didn't really have to spend much money building this. So let's go ahead and get into the couple most important cards in the deck. So we have Warlord's Fury for 1 red mana. Creatures you control get first strike until end of turn, draw a card. And then we have Crash Through, which is 1 mana sorcery. Creatures you control get trample until end of turn, draw a card. So these two cards are really important because they're gonna, one, keep our hands full. These aggro decks have a hard time keeping more cards coming. This helps you do that, but it's also gonna make sure your rat colonies can get in for damage, because the rat colonies don't buff up their toughness. So you wanna make sure that they either are gonna get through or have first strike so that they can stay alive in combat. And then for finishers, we have two things. We have 2 copies of Gary. So if we have a lot of rat colonies, we often can just, if we can't kill an opponent with Gary, we can at least stabilize by draining them for our devotion to black. And then we also have, can't read upside down, and this was a card I didn't know about until the other day, Cosmeriatic Wave, yeah. So this actually is kind of a sweeper. It kills a decent amount of stuff in Pauper, but more importantly, it makes our opponent's creatures unable to block. So even if we just have, 3 or 4 rat colonies out on the field by turn 4 or 5, that's often enough to just help us win the game by itself. We also have 2 copies of Echoing Return, which is really not good in Commander, except for these kind of decks. But if we are later in the game, we're running out of rat colonies, this is a good way to help us get them back. And then for removal, we just have 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, which it being able to hit any target is really good. So if we need to get a creature out of the way, we can do that. But if we also get our opponents low enough, we can just kill our opponents outright with Lightning Bolts, because it can hit any target. For ramp, we have 3 copies of Dark Ritual. That's a really good way to try to make sure we get more than 1 rat colony in each turn. For lands, we have 4 copies of Blowfell Caves, helps fix our mana and then gain us a little bit of life. Cinder Barrens, place out of those, just to help fix our mana a little bit more. And then for basics, we only have 2 mountains and the rest are swamps. So that's basically that deck. And again, you could probably get it for cheaper if you're willing to get certain versions or find them cheaper elsewhere. But that deck sets you back about $100, which, I mean, compared to other constructed formats, really cheap. Another point I should make is that typically in 60 card formats, you also play with sideboards. We don't play with sideboards because it's only me and a couple other people in my play group who play Pauper. So sideboarding is just not something we do a lot, but 15 card sideboard. So if there's searching cards in your deck that are bad against whatever deck you're playing against, you can switch some cards out for other cards you think might be better. But yeah, that is a quick overview of my 2 Pauper decks. I hope it gives you, if you want to see the specific deck list, I'll make sure to link those in the description of this video. If you hadn't even ever heard of Pauper before, I hope this encourages you to go try it out. It's a really cheap, really fun format, and I hope you and your playgroup enjoy it. See you later.